All right. Welcome to Keystone Sessions, everybody. We're going to get started. So I got a couple PSAs for the group tonight before we get started. First of all, welcome to CoLab for those of you that haven't been here before. I want to thank our sponsors. Without the generosity of Children's Mercy and H&R Block, we would not be here and we would not be continuing on week 32 of Keystone Sessions. So we're very proud of that. Also want to thank our partners down the street, Border Brewing and City Barrel, for their generosity in providing adult beverages for everyone. So if you get an opportunity, head down the street right around the corner on Holmes and City Barrel. And then further down the street on 18th Street is Border Brewing Company. Go see those guys. We have co-resident partners that are in here. Their brands are flying up here really quickly. Black Excellence Kansas City, Venture for America, Fired Up Studios, the Artemis Initiative with Goodwill. Their bridge technology program is in the back here. But a couple other PSAs relative to Keystone right now that I want to bring to everybody's attention after we roll through tonight's content. The first one is we have launched an accelerator program for new angel investors. We are in week 2 of our free series. So every Tuesday night at 5 o'clock, it's kind of a meetup format where we go through content. We'll launch into a paid program in the first part of March. So the free programs continue through February. We also are in the application period for the Social Venture Studio, our second cohort. So if you go to keystonedistrict.org, you look under Social Venture Studio, you can see the applications for that. This is for social entrepreneurs. It can be a for-profit or a nonprofit business. And then we are in the process right now of relaunching KC Collective, which is founder developed for founder organization, bringing events, curriculum training, startup perks, and we're going to launch a series of new features behind that over the next month or so as well. Really want to bring back that ecosystem and that community around our entrepreneurial community and provide the support that those founders need as they're continuing their journey here as entrepreneurs. Hey, Zeke, you want to switch us out to the background slide? Do you mind? So we're going to go ahead and started. We got, as you guys know, the purpose of Keystone, or for those of you who haven't been, the purpose of Keystone Sessions is to bring together 3 audiences every week that wouldn't otherwise meet each other or collide to create new intersections. That's how innovation is driven in a community. And so tonight's sessions, we are graced with our first guest who's going to talk through mental health, entrepreneurship, some of the challenges related to that. The second one, we've got Matt Watson and Matt DeCourcy. They're going to talk about finding the right talent. And then our last session tonight, we're going to be joined by Nick Ward-Bopp, who's going to talk to us. He's the founder of Maker Village KC. He also runs the Black and Veatch Maker Lab down at the Johnson County Library. And so we're going to talk about the maker ecosystem here in Kansas City and some of the things that we have in store for the maker community in 2023. So join us for that one at 7 o'clock. So I do want to get started, though, with our 5 o'clock session. I'm excited about this. I have a long-standing thing. I don't like to introduce my guests because I don't like to mess it up, honestly, just to be clear. So I usually let our guests introduce themselves. So I'm going to let our esteemed guest introduce himself tonight, and then we're going to just jump into the dialogue, and hopefully we'll reserve some time for some Q&A at the end as well. So with that, tell us who you are, man.
All right, we good to go? Can you hear me? Oh, perfect. Kind of cool. All right, so my name is Dominic Tyson. I'm the founder and CEO of the Lentro Group. Originally started in 2014 in a 1-bedroom apartment. I was dead broke, basically had no money, but my thought process was, what do I have around the house that I can use that I can turn into a business? And so I had a broom, I had some pine saws, some stuff like that. So I started a cleaning company. That was my first venture under the holding company. And then we just kind of snowballed from there, from one project to the next. The cleaning company didn't focus on residential. We primarily focused on commercial. So I would go door to door to knocking on banks to try to gain contracts. I had no clue what I was doing. And that's pretty much how I still live my life today. I like to jump into projects and ventures that I have no clue what I'm doing and try to figure it out along the way. I like to describe myself as basically a deal maker. If the numbers make sense, I can make a deal happen. So as of today, we have a portfolio of 9 ventures, 6 of which are joint ventures, 3 are wholly owned. And like I said, I make deals for a living. That's pretty much what I do. We're involved in real estate. We recently closed last year 2 deals to acquire insurance agencies, and I'll explain a little bit more about what we're going to do later on with that. But my journey hasn't been easy. I've had ups and I've had downs, and like I said, I started in 2014 as a full-time entrepreneur. I had to basically go get a job by 2016, because it just wasn't working out. And then during that process, I went through like this whole battle of depression. At my lowest, I had a lot of money and then I lost it, and thinking about suicide and all these different things. So got one hell of a journey, and it's still going to this day. So we just kind of go from there.
So when you approached me about a topic, I was a little bit surprised that this was going to be the topic that you wanted to talk about. So talk a little bit more about why this is. I mean, obviously this is a critical topic, and we hear more and more in the entrepreneurial community that there needs to be a greater focus on things like mental health, mental wellness, and then those extremes like mental care because of the depression, anxiety, and the loneliness of being an entrepreneur. So tell us a little bit about why this is so important to you and why you want to talk about it, I guess.
So for me, I dropped out of college to pursue entrepreneurship around that time. I remember going into class this day, and I had 3 classes, and they were all business classes. I remember walking in, and during each session, I raised my hand, and I asked every professor, like, hey, have you ever ran a business? Do you own a business? So forth and so forth. And every last one of them said no. And so I'm sitting there, I was like, okay, so you're only teaching me theory. There's no way I almost cursed. Can I say hell? All right, I naturally curse, so there's no way in hell you're going to tell me that you know exactly what you're doing, in the sense of, what about the days where the entrepreneur can't meet payroll? Like, how do they handle that day? Or, when they're dealing with things mentally, how do you handle that day? Like, you're only teaching me textbook knowledge. And I understood in that moment that this is probably a waste of my money. So I remember dropping out, and I went out and I found entrepreneurs, and I paid them instead. So instead of, basically paying a university for a degree or a piece of paper, I found people who were doing what it is that I wanted to do, and just kind of went from there.
So you paid them to teach you entrepreneurship?
Yep. And I also offered my time as well to just work for free. So,
okay.
And that's another story, but.
Yeah, we'll have to have you back for that one for sure. So when did you first? So you said 2014 was when you started.
That's when I initially started.
And 2016 was when
I had to go find a job, because it just wasn't working out. Like I said, never really understood what I was doing. I just knew that the numbers had to make sense. And at that time, the numbers didn't make sense for that particular venture. I just had to figure something out. I've always been the type of person to basically, like I said, I'm a deal maker since childhood. We had, I remember one day we had, they took away all the condiments, like ketchup, mustard, things like that, because we were having a food fight. So my natural instinct was to go to a grocery store, and, I bought up probably like 10 bottles of barbecue sauce, because I know we like barbecue sauce. And at that time, our school had metal detectors. So I'm going through the metal detector, security guards looking at me like, this kid with a backpack full of barbecue sauce, like, what is he doing?
He's got to be up to no good.
He's got to be up to no good. So, but little did he know, at lunchtime, I was actually selling it by the squirt. Like, so that's my mindset has always been supply and demand. I understood it from a very early age. The numbers have to make sense. If the numbers don't make sense, we have to leave. We have to cut our losses. So it's kind of.
So what was that feeling like for you in 2016 when, I mean, it's kind of like, was it a dreams dashed, I got to go back to the real world kind of moment? Did you think you were giving up on the dream, or did you think this was a temporary thing?
I did. It doesn't help that the job that I had to go take was a cubicle job. I don't know if anyone here has ever worked a cubicle job, but they feel so depressing, especially when every color is beige. You're just sitting in this box, you feel trapped in. It's like there's no way out. And I thought about quitting almost every single day, but when you're in this sense that you need money, like, I gotta pay bills, I gotta do X, Y, and Z. Yeah, I was depressed, and going back to that, like there was a week to where I thought about killing myself almost every day. Like I had the gun sitting on my desk at the time. Come home, look at the gun. I would just sit there and just look at it. Just ask myself, all right, are we gonna do it? When are we gonna do it? Like, is my life insurance in place? Like, will this cover it? All these different questions. Because I just knew deep down that working for someone else it wasn't what I was supposed to be doing, right? So, but because I didn't really understand what I was doing as far as like in the early years, you look back on it and you realize that that was actually, it was a gift, right? Like the entrepreneur journey is very much a roller coaster, right? Um, there's no textbook knowledge. There's no end all be all as far as, you do X, Y, and Z, you're going to get ABC results, right? It doesn't work like that. No two businesses are the same. No two entrepreneurs are the same. Everyone has a different upbringing as far as, their understanding of the process, right? I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things out of your control,
Yeah.
and you have to deal with those types of things. So you have you ever had a co-founder in any of the businesses, or I mean, a lot of times when we talk about mental health or entrepreneurship, everybody refers to this as a lonely journey.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So I've had one, and I left a lot of money on the table. That was recently. That was probably 2019. Had a joint venture going. It just became so stressful, even with the co-founder, because you see things differently. So out of all the hard work, and these were real estate ventures, right? So actually, it was more beneficial for my mental health to walk away from the deal. I just basically said, you can have the money, and I'll just figure it out. I'll start from scratch again, right? But yeah, so even if you do have a co-founder, there's no guarantee that things are going to work out either. I don't know if that answers that.
Yeah. Let's go back to the 2016. So you got a gun on your desk.
Yep.
You're thinking about suicide. So what got you out of that? Like, what was it? Something that you did? Was it a mindset shift? Like, talk to me a little bit about the process of coming out of that and moving on.
So two things that actually helped me. The first thing was realizing that I was selfish as hell to even want to consider it. Let's just be completely honest. There were a lot of people actually relying on me, family wise, and that would have been very selfish of me to take myself out, right? And then the second thing was because I've hit rock bottom, basically lost all of my money. What's the worst that can happen if you move forward and start over again, right? It's almost like if you experience rock bottom, you're no longer afraid of it, right? You lose all of your money. You think about killing yourself. And at that time, they repoed my car. Like, imagine this. Like, you're in the shower, and I was traumatized for years by this, right? You're in the shower, and they're coming to get your car, right? I'm in the shower, and all I hear is beep, 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 which is basically the truck. Like,
They're not coming to pick up the trash.
They're not coming to pick up the trash, right? So, man, they came and took the car. They took care. I lost everything, right? And because I haven't experienced that, it was tough to kind of figure out how to, But it did prove my point that, again, you can go to a university, they're not going to teach that and how to overcome that. It just doesn't work like that, right? It's very much cookie cutter approach, and there's, like I said, there's no such thing as opposed to there's a one size fits all for any venture.
So, have you had, like, I don't want to call them relapses, and for those of you who haven't heard me tell my story before, I suffer from severe depression as well. And it's an ongoing struggle. It's a constant struggle. So there's trauma-induced depression, things that like triggers and stimulus that send you into depression. And those things oftentimes can be overcome as those events pass and as you deal with the trauma and you deal with the issue. And then there's, medical, clinical depression type issues where, it just kind of, it's always like in the background. So for you, have you had moments since then through your entrepreneurial journey where you've had to deal with this again and again? Like how do you?
I would say for sure, but in a sense, so I'm very quiet as an individual. Around that time, I was very cocky. I was young. You're making money, you're getting these contracts. You're thinking, I'm good. Like, you can't tell me anything, and so it's like you're here, and then you get knocked down here. And so now, as I make money, and it continues to go up and up, I'm very more. I become more reserved, more patient, more quiet, and it's like I don't want to rock the boat, right, so to speak. But yeah, so I try to avoid those moments as far as like going backwards. I'm scared shitless, like every single day. It's like I'm scared shitless to go back to that day.
Are you afraid to take showers now?
Nah.
You said it traumatized you for years, so I had to ask. Like,
No, so like the beeping sound was very traumatizing.
anytime you
Like,
hear that beeping sound,
anytime you hear the truck, it's almost like a trigger. Like, whew.
Yeah.
Because now you're sitting there. Now you have no car. Now you have to figure this thing out. I mean, they took everything. I mean, short of the T-shirt on my back, right?
Right.
But around that time, though, I didn't know what I was doing paperwork wise. So now that lesson basically taught me, okay, I keep nothing in my name now, right? You'll be hard pressed to find anything that's in my name, right? You do everything strategically. You learn your lessons. You reach out to mentors. They kind of teach you the game, so to speak. Got a credit card maybe in my name. That's
Right.
about it. But it's like,
yeah, nobody's coming to steal that.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
So you learn your lessons, and I started studying around that time wealthy business owners a lot more, like diving headfirst into how they operate. And one of the things that stuck out to me was a lot of the wealthy businessmen that I know even today, they have like their house isn't even in their name, right? It's either an LLC or a trust, or their wife is the signee, right? So if me as a business owner, I fail, what are the chances of you coming to take my house, right? Now, it doesn't mean it's not possible. I'm sure they'll figure out a way, but you start to learn strategies along the way to kind of shield yourself. Right?
Yeah, protect your property, protect your your value that your value creation that you've had. But how about your mental being? How about your mental state? Like, so you said something earlier. I always tell my about kind of trying to level things out a little bit in terms of how you think about things. I always tell my kids, I have 3 adult children, and I always tell them, this too shall pass. Yeah. And I said, that is not something that you just say about bad things. You have to keep that in mind about the good things in your life too. Like you have to enjoy those good moments, but understand that, soak it up.
Yeah.
Like, enjoy it, because this too shall pass. But that holds true for the, and that try to get them to think of that, and just level things out for them. What kind of tools or what kind of things have you found that help you from a mental perspective or an emotional state perspective to keep things level for you now?
As far as tools, so I do every year, especially since that moment, I do a annual review, and I almost look at it like a annual report for, Fortune 500 company. So throughout the year, I journal almost on a daily, right? I journal like my process of what did I do today, how did I feel, and all these different things. And I noticed that, when we're so caught up in the moment of what's going on, we feel the burden a lot more. So at the end of every year, I take about a week, which is about the last week of the year. Take about a week. I review journal entries, different feelings, different decisions that I made. And I almost in a way look at myself from a third person. So basically try to remove myself from the situation and look at this individual, like journal-wise, I'm looking at this individual as someone totally different, right? So almost like if I hand you my journals and say, hey, tell me, what do you think, right? What was going on? Was I right in my thought process? Was I, too emotional? Did I allow myself to slip in this moment? All these different things. So I'm basically like, I'm handing you this set of journals for you to analyze. That's basically what I do for myself. So that's one of the biggest tools that help me is I'm analyzing, all these different, feelings and emotions, right? To kind of get a feel for what is it that I'm doing, right? What am I doing wrong? What am I doing right? And that's pretty much like my number one go-to, right? And it took me years to kind of figure that out. And I meant to bring one today, but I totally forgot.
Dominic, that's fascinating, because for years. So I journal, and it was part of like the toolkit that I got to help me deal with a lot of things. But I do it more as a, kind of psychological relief. You got to get it out of your head.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's just going to sit in there and fester and turn into all these wild thoughts. So if you write it down, sometimes you can let it go.
Yeah.
But I've never thought about like going back and like reviewing it. So I mean, I know people who do like an annual review of accomplishments and like, the more kind of objective things in their life. But I don't know that I've ever met anybody that like does an annual review of like their mental health or their emotional state, or like goes through and thinks about the year from that perspective. Yeah. How long have you been doing this?
For about 3 years now.
Okay.
So what I realized was I was way too close to it. When you're so close to your problem and what you're dealing with, it's hard for you to see it, right? And so one day, I was moving stuff out of storage and I found my old journals, right, from a few years ago, and I pulled it out and I'm going through it just randomly, and I noticed I was still dealing with the same shit a year later. So I was able to pick up on a pattern, right, as far as like my thought process and what's actually been causing me to slip.
Now, you had never recognized this pattern before?
Never recognized it until I pulled it out, and now even noticing the pattern, that almost sent me into a spiral, like a depression. Like, God damn, man, I just wasted another year. Like, you got to be kidding me, right? But like just going through that process, it really helped me take a step back.
Yeah, just recognizing the pattern doesn't mean you're gonna like solve it, but
correct.
At least now you know.
Correct. Like I have this thing that, whenever I'm doing something wrong, call me out, tell me. Like, I can't make a change unless I'm exposed to what it is that I'm doing wrong, right? And so I take that same approach with myself. I'm able to see it, and I'm able to come up with a different strategy to see if it works. I'm big on testing. I test a lot of, theories, processes, because again, I mean, growing up, I hated school. I'm a doer. I've always been all right, I got an idea, let's go with it, right? But as far as like, just a talking and trying to figure things out, theoretically, it doesn't work for me.
Right.
But yeah, so I have to look at it, see what's going on, read it, and just kind of figure out what adjustments I need to make, right?
And again, this isn't just on like maybe problems that you face, like from a work perspective or any of your joint ventures or businesses or anything. You're talking about
this is life.
Being able to do this from a kind of an emotional center or a mental state center.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Other things you do, like have you ever, I don't know, meditation, yoga, any of these other, kind of practices to help you with your mental health? Or
so one thing I picked up on was, and I'll share this, and I actually never told anyone this. So one of my biggest, it's almost like a superpower is, at night people have dreams, right? I like to tell people I actually have visions. So I can almost see certain things, like I'm being given visions on certain movements I need to make, then I make it, right? So one of the biggest things that people don't do is when we have these dreams, they actually give us a lot of answers to our problems, right? Especially when you're lying at night, subconscious is at ease, right? It's more, you're more receptive to the message. So first thing people tend to do is that they wake up, they touch their phones or check social media and all these different things. I turn the alarm off and I jump right back in bed, right? And I lie there. Or I'll maybe sit up in a, cross-leg position, but the very first thing I do is just sit in silence. And I try to replay the dream or the message or, feel the peace within the room for at least 10, 15 minutes, right? So that helps me almost like set the tone for the day. So definitely, if you're not doing that, you have to do that, right? Because we tend to wake up and we just have all these different obligations, priorities, things we need to do, but you don't do anything for yourself. Very rarely does, individuals do anything for themselves these days. It's for, for their boss, or, you have kids and all these different things. It's like, well, what are you doing for you? Like, it's almost everyone is just basically robotic in a sense. It's process, it's systems, and I get that. But the more you basically shut yourself out, it's like that inner being within you is patiently waiting. Like, when you're going to listen to what it is that I have to say, basically.
And as an entrepreneur, that is that burden, that obligation to others is oftentimes greater as you have employees or you have, you're growing a business and those types of things. So that makes a ton of sense. Do you ever find yourself writing those ideas down? Like when you wake up, that after that 10, 15 minutes of kind of reflection or silence, some of my best ideas come, in the middle of the night. And it's funny that you say that. And I've never thought of them as like visions, but and maybe it's because I went to bed so stressed thinking about it that like I dream the answer. I dream the solution, and it's vivid. Mm-hmm. Like it's like
so vivid. Like, so it's clear.
It's very clear, and then I wake up and I'm like, shit. What was that? I had it. It was right there. I forgot it because I got up and I jumped and I made coffee
and
started
making stuff and doing whatever. So that's
you ever capture those things?
I do, absolutely. So before I get out of bed, and I replay the vision almost like 3 or 4 times, right? I can replay it to the T. Okay, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. Jot it down or put it in, like keywords in my phone. That way it triggers something and I remember it. Absolutely. Like you have to do that, right? Because our dream speaks to us in codes. It doesn't necessarily give you all the answers that you need, but it gives you codes. It's almost like Morse code. Like it's giving you certain tips and things that you need to do, certain adjustments you need to make. You just kind of go from there.
So what was I don't know if since 2016, right? Since the probably it sounds like the severe point for you, or like one of those moments for you. Other instances where you have felt like those moments of despair or those moments of kind of critical thinking about yourself. We're in our heads so often. Like most of the things that we think people think about us, they don't think about us.
Yeah.
And when I say they don't think about us, they don't think about us at all.
Yeah.
Like it's not even that they don't think negatively about us. They don't think about I think people think this thing and they're like, who are you? Like I don't think about you at all.
Yeah.
Do you ever find like those other moments where you've in your journey through business ventures or for other instances where you've been in your head again and you've been thinking like, oh, here I go again?
Yes, but I'm hardwired to understand patterns. Like I can pick up on a pattern so quickly. So it wasn't just in my business life; it was also in my personal life.
So you have triggers. You know what your triggers are now?
Absolutely, absolutely. I can pick up on it almost instantly, right? But then you also have to realize that there are situations to where if you just listen to even the people around you, like certain key words that they say, like it's almost like it's a message to you, right?
Give me an example.
So there was a time. This was 2018-ish. So I went on a date every day for a week, right? Went on a different date every day, and every single woman said the same thing. And this is so weird, so bizarre. But every one of them said you're emotionally unavailable.
Oh, wow.
Now, at the time, I didn't know what the hell that meant. There's some feedback there. Right?
Yeah,
it's like... But I didn't realize that until after the last one, like the last date. Like you're emotionally unavailable, and I was like, "What are you talking about? Like, I'm available. Like I'm sharing. Like, what are you talking about?" And they were absolutely right. But I didn't understand that, so that actually led me to go see a therapist. Right?
Okay.
To kind of work through that situation to kind of figure out, okay, what are they talking about? Right? And they were absolutely right. So.
Was that a moment in time, or you think this is something that you've like?
It was a moment in time.
That it's been like you've been emotionally unavailable like for a long time before.
So up until that point, I was definitely emotionally unavailable. In a sense, it felt like I had to be. So growing up, I never really had anyone that I can go and talk to. I was abused by my stepfather and all these different things, and I never told my mom. Right. I didn't tell my mom until maybe several months after he had passed of cancer, everything that was going on, because she was so in love with him, and he was putting food on the table and all these different things. So I basically sucked it up. It was like, all right, I'll deal with it, right? But it's like year after year. So during that time as a child, I shut down. Like you have no one to go to express yourself, or even if you did, would they believe you, right? So yeah, I was emotionally unavailable from an early age.
You think those things impacted your business relationships as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Where you're keeping people at a distance, where you're afraid to, share certain things about yourself. Now I'm an open book, very transparent. I'll share anything if you ask me, like,
I
how am
think
I
you've
doing X, Y,
I
and
think
Z.
you've
So it's
proven
like,
that. Yeah, I think you're walking that walk.
but that wasn't always the case.
Right.
But yeah, like the psychological aspect of, you know, concealing your feelings, your emotions, your identity, so to speak. It wasn't just within home; it was also in school too. Like, I remember one day I'm going into PE, right, and we're in line, and I'm fighting for this position in line, and me and this kid got into it. So the teacher, she had a nephew at that school too. We had to be in maybe fourth or fifth grade. So at that time, it was middle school and elementary were like they were connected. So she goes and gets her nephew, which is like seventh or eighth grade, and she pulled us inside, and he beat the shit out of me, right? So think about this: like you have no one to go to as a kid in your home to like express what's going on, and you no longer feel safe
Right.
at school either, right? So you don't feel safe. You shut down. I basically became quiet. Just kind of go to that experience. So
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, as it impacts your business and as you've kind of dealt with these things, I want to go back to kind of where I started. Like, why share this now? Like, what do you hope to achieve for other entrepreneurs? I mean, semi-rhetorical question, but what do you hope people take away from your message? What do you hope people take away from your stories? You talked about, this being a roller coaster. Talk a little bit about that too. Like, I think most entrepreneurs can relate to that, but talk a little bit about like what that means to you.
So I had heard a quote, and it really stuck with me. Or it's a fun fact, basically saying that the seatbelt was created after the car, right? And so that clicked for me. As an entrepreneur, we tend to get depressed when things are going as according to plan, right? Or we feel we have to have all our T's, cross I's, dotted, things like that. And so that was a big aha for me, right? And that's what I basically attribute to like the roller coaster ride, because you think that everything is going to be smooth sailing, right? But it's not. Like your journey is very much ups and downs, loops, and then some rides they actually go backwards, right? Depending on which amusement park you go to. But it very much resembles that, right? So the click for me is when you're going through whatever you're dealing with, is first understanding that you don't have to have all the answers. There's no such thing as a cookie cutter approach, as I mentioned. You do A, you do B, you do C, and you're going to get X, Y, and Z. It doesn't work that way all the time. So as far as like along your journey, is basically realizing that, you got to enjoy the ride, like they say. As cliche as that sound, like you really do have to enjoy the ride.
Yeah, no, I would argue that roller coaster that you described, that's kind of life, right? But I think your point is that as a business owner or as an entrepreneur, is it the severity of the ups and downs? Is it the frequency of the ups and downs? Is it the not knowing what's around the corner? Like, what makes kind of that up and down nature of life more difficult as an entrepreneur in your mind?
I think the older we get as humans, we tend to seek comfort a lot more. We become less, basically, risk averse, right? You don't want to do certain things that can get you ahead, although because it feels uncomfortable, right? I've noticed that for me, the things that whenever I start to feel nervousness or anxious, I know that that's what I'm supposed to do, right? You run towards it. You run towards this feeling. Is actually what you should be doing, right? Instead of backing away from it, because that's where the growth opportunity is. It really is a growth opportunity.
How do you do that? Like when you have that feeling, like what is it? What do you tell yourself, or what things do you do to get comfortable with that situation, or take those things head on?
So the biggest thing is you have to understand what voice is with inside your head, and understand how do you motivate yourself. So for me, I tend to curse myself out, or say certain things, or whenever I'm in this particular feeling of anxiousness, it's like I may say something like, what the fuck are you afraid of? Like, you've already hit rock bottom. Like, are you afraid to hit it again? Or, I mean, what are you afraid of? At this point, you have nothing to lose, everything to gain, right? And so the biggest thing I try to stress to myself is I'm going to die anyway.
Right.
I'm gonna die at some point. So the thing is, do you want to die, like the saying, you want to die on your feet or you want to die on your knees? So it's like, okay, well,
I've never heard that, but yeah, I get it.
yeah, it's that saying, like, I'd rather die standing up on my feet, basically going to war, toe to toe, as opposed to dying on my knees, begging for safety, comfort, and please let me live. Right? Like, we're all gonna die anyway. So it's pretty much, are you going basically to your deathbed doing what it is that you want to do, or you want to play it safe until you die? Like that concept, it doesn't register with me. I'm going to play it safe until I die. No matter what you do or what I do, we're all going out to the grave, or if you're cremation, whatever you believe, right? You're going. So there's no such thing as a safe path, right?
I gotta know, was it your experience in Cubeville that gave you that, like, I'm not gonna die like this? Like, is that what like got you back into being an entrepreneur? Or was that always kind of a temporary, got to get my financial footing again, and you knew you were going to head back down that path again? Because my sense would be, like, a lot of people will deal with some of the things that you're talking about and say, all right, it was not for me. Like, yeah. That was like, I don't want to go back there. Like, I'd rather sit at this desk, collect this paycheck, and find other passions in my life. I know a lot of people that maybe think like that. I've talked to people lately that are like, man, I'd rather just have a 9-to-5 and not have to worry about stuff.
Yeah.
What was it for you?
It seemed like no matter what job I took, within 2-3 months, I was depressed again. It was like, because my spirit knew this is not what you're supposed to be doing, and I would hear it. It would basically be like a drill sergeant at this point. So, all right, how much longer you want to do this? Like, I'm patient. I'm waiting for you to take the step. Like, take the next step. But the turning point for me was, so around that time when I was at my lowest, I ran a marathon. I signed up for the marathon 2 days before, right?
Now, were you running before this?
I wasn't. So prior to that, you
were thinking about suicide, man, but death by running. Come on, man.
And so I didn't know this. So this was 2 days before. I just didn't care. It was like, prior to that, I never ran more than 2 miles consecutive. Like, I would typically do, 2 miles and I would done if I'm doing like a workout. My workouts are very inconsistent. But so my logic was, I'm already at my lowest. I got nothing to lose. And so I just had this feeling like a marathon has to be mental. It has to be. It has to be 90% mental, 10% physical. Just has to be.
How'd that work out for you?
And so crazy thing is, I
won the marathon.
So yeah. I'm cruising. I'm fucking cruising. I'm 13 miles in, and mind you, I've never ran more than 2 miles, like straight. So I'm 13 miles in, and everyone is cheering each other on. There's people on the side, they're cheering you on or whatever. And this was the turning point. So mile 13, it's this family on the side, they're celebrating, and they're giving people drinks, fruit, whatever. These guys over here, they gave me some alcohol. Like, I'm enjoying the hell out of the race. I'm like, I didn't even think I was going to make it this far. Because initially, when I hit the starting point, and this goes back to, as I'm walking to the starting point, I was feeling anxious. So this is when I learned about me, that my growth comes through those moments of feeling nervous and anxious. Like, so being able to fight through it. So I'm cruising. Like, hey, you want a shot? Give me that shot. Like, this is easy. 13 miles? Come on.
Marathons.
Marathon, whatever. Like I told you, it was mental. Shortly after I took that shot, body started breaking down.
Yeah, pulled a hamstring, didn't you?
Oh, man, it was brutal. My body's never felt that kind of pain ever in my life, ever. And I mean, it was coming from all over, shooting down my legs, back tightening, and it was just, at one point I was crawling in the middle of the street, right? And there's people on the side like, hey, are you okay? You want to stop? I'm like, no, because I had told myself before I even started, like, I was prepared to die. Like, I'm okay. Like, I'm willing. My life is going absolutely nowhere. Whatever. Like, who cares? So I'm crawling at this point, and then I get up, I'm walking, right? And then I'm running again, and then your body break down again, you hit the ground, right? So between mile 13, and I thought about this because I went through that path today just to get here. Between mile 13 and mile 22 was the roughest part of my life, right? Body was just never felt this kind of pain. And along the way, people are there, they're passing me. And I don't know if anyone's ever ran like a marathon or a half marathon or 5K, but you have these markers, right? These people holding the signs, letting you know how much time you have. So I'm cruising. I was pacing at least 4 hours. Mind you, finishing, I was pacing 4 hours before mile 13. So I'm starting to see everyone pass me up. They're passing me up one at a time with the markers. And, it got to the point to where the last marker was basically not too far off. And then she passed me. And society understood the route where I was going. I didn't care. I was like, I'm finished this damn race. Mm-hmm. I'm either finished or I'm going to die trying, right? So even if they open up the roads, you're going to see me. I'm getting to this finish line or I'm dying. Like, there is no other option, right? So between mile 13 and 22 were the hardest, and then something clicked for me. And it just goes to where, like, if you're willing to endure the low moments, the pain, to get to where you're trying to get to. It was almost like this superhuman effect. Like, mentally, like a switch went off, and all the pain that I was feeling, I was still feeling it, but I didn't give a fuck anymore. Yeah. Right? It was like, suck it up. Like, get over it and keep going. And there was the last guy that finished, and if you Google it, like, you can Google like the results to this day, it's still in like the SEO rankings. So
you weren't the last guy?
I wasn't the last guy, right. But the guy that actually passed me up, he was on one foot. He did it in a boot. So imagine I'm broken down in the middle of the road. He has, and this guy still to this day, I don't know who he is, but that inspired me too. He had 1 foot, and he was just like he was going. And I was like, there's no fucking way he's getting there before I do.
Tortoise in the hair, man. Yeah.
No fucking way this is happening, right? So between mile 22 and like the finish line, reaching that finish line was the greatest feeling ever. Now, the event was basically they were wrapping things up, picking up chairs and putting them on the trucks. I didn't care, right? Because I was doing it for me. Like I said, I was either going to die or I was going to get to this finish line. So that was a turning point, like a true turning point for my life, because it made me realize that I can endure anything, right? Number one, when you're feeling anxious, when you're feeling nervous, basically what I was feeling at the starting line, able to fight through that and just take it day by day, right? And that helped me along by like my entrepreneurial journey, because it made me realize that not every day is going to be a great day. You're going to have some shitty moments. You're going to go through a lot of pain, a lot of ups and downs. But man, when I tell you that was one of the greatest experiences ever, like, and it wasn't just a shot I took at mile 13. Like, there were people handing you beer. Yeah. I'm just give it to me. Like,
I'd ask you what you learned. You already told us, but I mean, like, maybe half marathons next time. Maybe that's.
I have this thing, like, I'm a one and done type person. I'll do it once just to say I did it, and I'm good. I am perfectly okay never running another marathon. Like, no, thank you.
Somebody's gonna be chasing me.
No. I'm good. And still to this day, I still won't run that far. Like, I'm good.
But that was a big moment for you, like in terms of how you approach life.
How I approach life. It taught me more about life than anything, because we, like I said, it goes back. We tend to seek comfort. Things have to go a certain way. We want to feel a certain way, or we try not to do things because it gets us outside of our comfort zone, right? So now I take this approach with anything that I'm stepping into, as far as like venture-wise. What's my comfort level, right? Do I feel like I got it, or am I scared shitless? If I'm scared shitless, I'm all in, right? It's like, let's do it. Let's figure it out along the way, and just kind of go from there.
What's being confident tell you about a situation?
As far as confidence, so
So like if you say, all right, so like I've got anxiety about it, so I'm all in, versus the, oh no, I got this. Like, do those just not challenge you, and that's why you don't don't pursue those because you're not being pushed? Or
I would honestly say that's what it is. I tend to do things that people think or say is impossible. I'm only motivated by doing certain things or someone doubting me or things like that. If my back is in a corner, and that's going back to like me being a kid, right? That's in almost in every facet of my life. I only got the best out of me when I was doubted or when my back was up against the wall and all these things like that. And I noticed going back to like the journal, I picked up on that pattern that I only tend to do my best work when there's a lot of stress, a lot of pressure, right?
I find that to be common amongst entrepreneurs. Like I do find that to be something I hear a lot is that, as the stress rises, like
You
whether
rise
it's
to the
focus
occasion.
or you rise to the occasion.
Yeah, it's like
those types of things.
it's challenges. I'm in it for the growth. If there's no challenge, I get bored very easily. You know.
So, where you're at now and like what you're doing now, it sounds like you've reached kind of I don't want to say a Zen state, but you've kind of reached this like more level-headed, as you've aged, maturation about how you think about these things. The journal piece that you talk about, what other things do you do, or what other things are you looking for to prevent like the downside of like the mental state, the emotional state of what you're doing? Like what other things are you doing to help there?
So I would say on that topic, I would first say that we have to accept ourselves. And so there's this saying that if there's no enemy within, the enemy without can't do us any harm, right? My biggest, you know, enemy was myself, right? I couldn't accept the fact that how I was doing certain things was okay, right? So I had to find peace in that the way in which I did things and in the way in which I operate was perfectly fine for me, right? We live in this world to where they'll tell you, oh, the jack of all trade is the master of none, right? But you find out that that was only one part of the quote, right? The full quote is the jack of all trade and the master of none, but it's sometimes better than the master of one, right? We're in this in an economy to where we're dealing with AI, right? A lot of jobs are being displaced. AI, like technology innovation, is moving so fast, right? So the person that spent 20 years learning one thing, they're almost becoming obsolete, right? My strategy has always been to learn a little or a lot about so many different things and piecing it together, right? So it's basically being flexible in my approach. My flow state, and one thing that I had to accept was accepting the fact that I do my best work again when my back is against the wall, and then number two, where I take on more, like bite off more than I can chew, right? So I'll tend to do 2 or 3 projects at once, or two or three different deals at once, whereas one person is telling you just do one business for the next 20, 30 years. I'm like, oh, the hell with that. That's boring.
Now I feel like you're reading my journal. That's not cool. What else? So I think we've covered a lot of ground. And by the way, thank you for sharing your story. Like, thank you for sharing, kind of how you cope with these things and kind of what you've been through. I appreciate that, and I know a lot of people are going to appreciate hearing that. What other things have you not gotten to say that you wanted to say tonight? Is there anything that we haven't talked about yet, or any other tips or words of wisdom that you'd like to share?
It's a great question.
One a night. I usually come up with one a night. So,
one of the biggest things I want to stress to anyone, and I tend to stress this the most, is the whole deathbed analogy. Like, I don't think we think about death enough, right? And we're almost afraid of talking about it, and I get it, right? But I want to stress this point to entrepreneurs, especially business owners, is making sure that your documentation, your paperwork, everything is in order, right? We have the discussion, we talk about building generational wealth and all these different things, and yet we see celebrities and business owners dying every day. They don't have a will, life insurance, or you have to spend weeks trying to find passwords, policy information. You just defeated the whole point of passing things down to the next generation, because now that's saying everything that you worked so hard for. Now the government is involved. You're dealing with probate, all these different things. It's like that made no sense, right? So definitely, I've been an advocate of this. Get your documents in order, like, and have these conversations with your family, with your loved ones. And you're more than likely, as a business owner, because you're a leader, you are more than likely have to be the one to initiate the conversation, right? And take note of it. Record the conversation, and all these different things. Like, I just did it recently with my mother and brother, and I understood a while ago that he would not be able to handle the death of my mother, a lot more peacefully than I would, right? Because I understood that death is freedom. Death is freedom for me, right? You're free, you're going on to the next level, right? But so we were having this conversation, and he just started crying. He didn't want to have it, right? It's like, no. We're having this conversation. We need to know where everything is, passwords, amounts, all these different things, because this is the whole point of getting things to the next generation so that they can flourish. So that's the thing I want to stress the most is, if you don't have your documentation in order, like, what are you waiting for? Like,
Yeah, because it's going to be too late.
it's going to be too late. Like, you just defeated the whole purpose of building what you're building. And yes, it's scary to talk about for most people, but it has to happen.
Yeah, no, it's great advice, and I think I know a lot of people. I mean, I'm guilty of a lot of that too. So, and I know a lot of people that probably could use that advice. So, again, Dominic, thanks for sharing. Thanks for being here. Thanks for agreeing to do this. I really appreciate it. And you mentioned a couple other things we'll probably have you back to talk about. Some of these other lessons that you've learned as an entrepreneur through the years.
I learn lessons every day.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
Hard lessons, hard headed.
Well, yeah, come back and share those things with us for sure. So, again, appreciate it. Definitely.
Absolutely.